everybody, and welcome to the zoo. I am the Rusty Panda, and I am here for you. Today we have Jerfo the Music Addict. Bah, 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 bah. DJ
Hi,
Erfo in
everybody.
the house. What? I'm so excited to be interviewing such an amazing person right here. I even have his shirt, DJ Erfo.
Woot!
Hey, Condemn Breaker.
King Dam
fellow
Breaker.
fellow
How you
mod
doing, friend?
panda also in the house. My mom in the house. What I've got my husband as a mod. It's great. It's a family affair in here. We're all close. Okay, so basically what this is Wiki Wednesday. So we go down the Wikipedia rabbit hole of 15 things that we like and 5 things we don't. I say the collective we. I don't know why. It's mainly for Jerfo. But we're going to go through them anyway. We definitely have some shared interests, which is really great. So we'll be able to geek out and find out some more information about some things that maybe we didn't know about. So let's get started. The first thing we have up is prog rock or progressive rock. So this was the first thing you put on your list, so it's the first thing that I put up on the screen. And essentially, I want to know, and I'll ask this a lot, as far as why did this make your list? So when did you start listening to this? What made this list for you?
So, the reason that it was at the very top is I literally had just done an all progressive rock stream on the DJ Airfo channel,
Okay.
so it was definitely like fresh on the top of my brain. But also, yeah, I've been listening to prog. Oh gosh. Well, yeah, so backing up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in a house where I had an older brother who was a drummer. If you're a drummer coming of age in the 1980s, you listen to Rush. That's what you did. So my brother brought Rush into the household, and I kind of took it and got into Alex Lifeson, and like that was sort of the gateway drug to progressive rock for me. And then that led to a whole bunch of other bands. Like in high school I got into like Yes, like really big time got into Yes. So if heck, just if I reach down here, just the discards from today's DJ Airfo stream,
Mm-hmm.
like I've got literally got Permanent Waves right here.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, there's a lot of glare. And what else? Yesterdays.
Nice.
So yeah, like it's just it's the stuff that I grew up on. And as a musician, like there's a pretty decent amount of musicianship and complexity, and there's a lot that a budding musician, can learn from listening to prog rock. So that's part of how I developed my style, and the weird stuff that I do today. A lot of it was sort of birthed out of my love of prog, and also kind of ostracized me from a lot of my peers, because prog was the last thing that you wanted to be listening to in the late 80s, early 90s. I remember my first day in my college dorm, we had to play this game where we had to say like 5 things about ourselves. And one of the things that I mentioned was, oh yeah, I like progressive rock. And a few days later, one of the upperclassmen in the hallway came up to me, and he was like just roaring drunk, and he's like, dude, when you said that you love progressive rock, I thought I was gonna hate you, because I hate prog rock so much. But you're actually a pretty good dude. So
Those are the things you never forget, right?
no, absolutely.
Yeah, my mom, she says, okay, like him, because my dad was a huge Neil Peart fan.
Yeah.
Like huge. And so, I grew up listening to the same thing, oddly enough. So the Genesis Journey, Rush, Kansas. We're actually seeing Kansas 50th anniversary tour coming up here in July with my mom.
Nice.
So I'm really excited about that. But yeah, so it's weird because I was looking and it said stylistically it's like psychedelica. psychedelia, and then jazz, folk, and classical. That's the origins of prog rock. And I'm curious your take on that as far as, jazz stylistics, or because I know you're so big into music. How do you feel it came to be with those origins? Like, do you see those in the
Yeah,
music?
absolutely. Yeah, like a lot of early prog was based around um like the some of the really early stuff. There was a band called The Nice, which
Okay.
was a band. Keith Emerson, who eventually formed Emerson, Lake and Palmer, was the keyboardist in The Nice. And yeah, his big thing was like they did sort of rock versions of classical songs. So classical was a huge component of progressive rock. Um, these musicians that had some classical training. John Lord from Deep Purple was another one. I know we don't normally consider Deep Purple to be a prog rock band,
Okay.
but kind of in the early days, one of their first 3 or 4 albums was called Concerto for Rock Band and Orchestra, because they heck, I like, you can bear with me for a second.
Yeah, go ahead.
Somewhere down here. Yeah, here we go. Here you go.
Oh,
Here's
wow.
so yeah, that was the thing. You had some like pretty good musicians who were also into, had some classical training, like I said, and that's so that was a big part of it. Um, and similarly, you had kind of on the jazz side, because there was sort of some parallel stuff that was happening in the jazz world, where you had jazz guys like Miles Davis,
Mm-hmm.
who it's pretty well documented that Miles was really envious of Jimi Hendrix. He
Okay.
saw like the crowds that Jimi Hendrix got, and um, the women screaming at Jimmy and stuff like that. And Miles was like, I want that. So he started incorporating rock elements into jazz. So all of these things, all these various things, started getting truly fused together, and the stuff that leaned a little bit more jazz became what we later called fusion. But the stuff that was more rock became progressive rock, and it was this big stew of um, classical influences and jazz influences and folk influences, like band like Fairport Convention.
Okay.
So
British folk rock group.
yeah,
Interesting.
so yeah, there are bands like Fairport Convention and the Strobes and Steely Span, not to be confused with Steely Dan. Um, I think apparently Steely Dan wanted to sue Steely Span for the use of the name, only to find out that Steely Span had their name first. So they said, "No,
Oh,
that
okay.
that that might be counterproductive if we try that." So anyway, so it was, yeah, that was kind of the origins, where it was just um, everybody experimenting and musicians getting a little bit better and a little bit more skilled back you know when more so than when rock and roll was new.
Okay.
And you had you could even see it in the Beatles career. I know nobody's ever going to call the Beatles a progressive rock group.
Well,
You can
what's
see
funny, and I'll stop you right there really quick. I scrolled down earlier, and it said that backgrounds and roots. It said bands like the Beatles, the Beach Boys, and the Byrds, who have fused elements of progressive rock with predicted the progressive pop groups. So
absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Yep.
crazy.
Yeah, and then I mean, just in, think of the short period of time in which the Beatles actually existed. It's kind of crazy when you think about it these days. It was like, the early '60s to 1970, and that was it. And how their music transitioned from this really simplistic 3 or 4 chord kind of thing to
Mm-hmm.
these, sometimes very sprawling, almost epic, like almost progressive rock, like songs. Like Here Comes the Sun has this, odd time signature break, like right in the middle of the song. that Ringo struggled to drum along with. But then anyway, um,
That's great.
so yeah, that was kind of the birth of all that stuff.
Yeah, and like even looking at you know, Sergeant Pepper's, and then I keep coming back to this psychedelic rock, and acid rock, and you immediately said the nice, and
Yep.
that's right there on there. And the first one that I think of is Pink Floyd. I mean, that's the first one that I think of when I hear
Yeah.
psychedelia or psychedelic rock. I don't know why I want to keep saying that. And infos are welcome in. Thank you for the 22-month streak. Um, so yeah, I think that when you were talking about jazz too, well, let me back up for a minute. So we've got peak years, and immediately it mentions Rush, yes, and Pink Floyd and all of that for prog rock between
Hmm.
1971 and 1976. So, for me, prog rock immediately goes to Rush, number one, not because I even grew up on it, just even the sound. But you reminded me of Yes. I totally. Something you were playing earlier today reminded me so much of Yes, and it wasn't Yes. It sounded just like them. And I'm trying to remember who it was because I was like, man, of all the bands that my dad listened to, like this sounds a lot like. And now that I think about it, it sounded like Yes.
Well, I did play one Yes track today. The cover of the song, Simon Garfunkel's "America" was Yes. So
No.
no, there wasn't that one.
No, I'm saying no way. Like, I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was
Oh,
Yes.
that's crazy. That was so
Yep,
good.
I know.
That
It's
was
so
so
good.
good. That was so good. Okay, yeah, and then Progress Like Kansas and Frank Zappa. Um, so yeah, and then Boston, Kansas, and Styx. I mean, this is literally my entire childhood right here. Um, oh, there it is.
Here's some Frank.
Frank Zappa. Yep.
Yeah, I could see that they mentioned some kind of lesser known bands. Like there was a mention of Starcastle and Happy the Man.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and that's like Happy the Man was great, but that was like right. And it's a little bit fuzzy on my screen, so it's kind of tough for me to tell. But um, that was like right when prog rock started to go out of favor. Um, and yeah, they kind of fell off the face of the planet really quickly. But
So
they're
I'm
really good.
not sure of how. So they're still going 2000 to present. So they're still
Yeah,
they still exist, which is I love that. I love when bands come back and reformation to 2000 to 2005. So I guess that's when this was created because I guess they're
yeah.
not going anymore. 2005 is a long time ago, so I don't know why it said still current, but I guess this hasn't been updated since a minute. But but still, let me see. This is just I'm curious as far as the here we go. Happy the Man. So they did one, two, three, four, five studio
Yeah.
albums.
Yeah, let me see. Hold on, because I've got a couple of them within arm's reach here.
I'm ready. You
Let
feel
me
like
see.
Mary Poppins, like you're just pulling these out of the hat, the bag. Yeah.
Let me see. Hold on. We've got Parkland, Pause, Hatfield, Harrison, Harris. Come on. Happy. Where's Happy? Let me see. Oh, that's it would help if I understood alphabetical order better. Let me see. Okay, so yes, their first two albums are the ones to get. So my copies are a little bit beaten up, but this is their first album. Their keyboard player was tremendous. This guy named Kit Watkins. This is their second one, Crafty Hands.
Yes.
Um, Kit Watkins was a phenomenal keyboard player, which is why I was kind of bummed that he didn't really join any of the any of the reunions that happened in the 2000s.
Okay.
But he's so good, so good.
Yeah, David Rosenthal then took over.
Yeah,
But it does show that They are still kicking it at 2013. So I don't
Oh, there we
know.
go.
Yeah, they are 2023, not 2013. My goodness, when are we? Um, so okay, so Kit Watkins. So here we go further down the wiki hole. So, um, Happy the Man from 73 to 79. What specifically? Okay, engineer from the Beatles' White Album sessions. Wait, hold on. Both albums were produced by Ken Scott, engineer from the Beatles' White Album. Okay,
Yeah.
so and then engineer David Bowie. Wow. Okay, so
Yeah,
this.
I mean, these were like real legit productions, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, it coincided um, with punk and disco, like kind of aroundish the same time. Although punk ended up sort of killing off disco too, but punk really did a number on progressive rock, and disco kind of did a number on progressive rock. Because after a while, people were like, "I'm tired of having to count all the time. I just want four on the floor, and I want to have a good time doing it."
Right.
Um,
Punk.
and yes,
Punk
and
killed prog rock.
it certainly didn't help.
When you think of punk, though, what are you thinking? Like, what is your immediate punk that killed prog rock band?
I mean, the Sex Pistols, they were super outspoken about hating uh, progressive rock bands.
Okay.
Although they did speak highly of Peter Hamill and Van de Graaff Generator.
Okay.
Specifically Johnny Rotten was a fan of those guys. But in general, like they wanted to do everything that the prog rock bands didn't do. So they just wanted like super simple songs, super simple, uh, stage performances. They didn't want the rotating piano in midair that Emerson, Lake and Palmer had, and stuff like that.
Right.
Which is really interesting because then when you think of what happened in the '80s, a lot of the big overblown stuff kind of came back into fashion. Strangely enough, not so much the prog rock music,
Mm-hmm.
but the bombast that was associated with progressive rock just got a fresh coat of lipstick on it, and it like all that stuff came back. And what was, I don't know if you've ever seen video footage of it, but in the '70s, Keith Emerson had this rotating grand piano that he would play, and in the '80s, that just transformed into Tommy Lee's rotating drum kit, um,
Right.
with Motley Crue. So
Right. Right. Oh wow. Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
yeah, so it's yeah, the music was very different, but a lot of the overdone stage production and stuff like that, all the costumes, you think about the '70s and like Yes were in these shiny sequined capes, and Genesis with Peter Gabriel doing all these crazy costume changes and stuff like that. The '80s really weren't all that different. Like the big bands in the '80s were all, you know, dressed up in very loud outfits,
Yeah.
differently loud, but still equally as loud.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was grunge that killed them off. Like you know it's interesting how cyclical it went for a while.
Yeah. Oh, Kiss and Ozzy stole theatrics too.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I was just looking at this picture and what they were wearing, and just
Even
some.
that, I mean, you can look at Chris, the bass player, was always wearing really loud stuff. Rick Wakeman was always wearing these sequined, like, dressed like a wizard, sequined wizard robes and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
this was the picture. Yeah. Oh, I can't really scroll
Yeah,
down,
uh,
but yeah.
but you can you can see like how
Mm-hmm.
shiny he is.
He's very shiny.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
And he
think
still does.
he
Like
does
he'll
he.
still wear it. He's yeah. He owns it now.
That's good.
He's
That's good that
also
he owns
he,
it.
he's also hilarious. On He actually does shows that are half like stand up comedy, half music.
Oh,
And if
really?
you ever watch him, this is Rick Wakeman from Yes. If you go and watch his induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, watch his speech, because it is like hilarious and like completely not safe for work.
Okay.
Uh,
Yeah, here's some of his wizard cloak, it looks like.
but and that picture's probably only from what, a few years ago.
2017.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see. First sessions were for David Bowie.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, there's the picture for the sequins.
So hot.
Yeah. Totes in. Yeah, that's, and then more cape stuff. Again, I can't zoom in. It gets really
So
weird, but yeah.
okay, there's the mini moog, the pillows that I got. That's basically what you're looking at in pillow form behind me.
Oh, that's cool. Wow, to have that
Yep.
many keys is. I mean, you have a lot of keys.
But that was always his thing. And these days, it's quite honestly, it's like completely unnecessary because you can do everything via MIDI, or really these days you can do everything via USB or MIDI over USB.
Right.
So you can get away with having maybe a couple of keyboards and that's it, and then just let MIDI take care of the rest. But no, his thing was always like have a dozen keyboards. So even though he doesn't have to do it these days, he still does it for the theatrics.
Right. Wow. Okay, so we kind of talked about how you've got all of these things on your pillows and you've got all of these different keys. So what got you into playing music and let's which I don't know which came first. I assume drums came first or what came first? The guitar?
Guitar came first. It's
Okay.
like as far back as I remember, I always wanted to play guitar. So from what I remember, we'd be like when I was little, like maybe I don't know, 4 or 5 years old. We'd be out at a flea market or something like that. There'd be some old beat up used guitar for a couple bucks. I'd say, "Mommy, Daddy, can I have that? I want to play guitar." And they'd get it for me, and I'd play it until I would break every single string on the thing, and then they'd throw it away. And then finally, when I was 8, they're like, "Okay, we'll get you a real guitar. We'll get you guitar lessons, and we'll see what happens." And that's like that. The rest is history.
Wow.
I never stopped loving guitar and loving music.
So my brother started with guitar and then moved to keys. So is it really that what's it called, transcribing? Is it really that simple to make the transition?
I definitely wouldn't call it simple. Um, I mean, it certainly helps to have a background in one to help you learn a little bit about the other.
Right.
Um, like I think everybody who is into music, even drummers, should at least know how, like, have a rudimentary knowledge of playing keyboards.
Mhm.
Um, because I think that's keyboards are the easiest way to visualize um, what scales look like and stuff like that. It's a lot easier to visualize on a keyboard than it is on a guitar or a woodwind instrument or something like that.
Right.
Just everything is very plainly laid out in front of you on a typical keyboard.
Yeah, and especially being able to read music I think is certainly helpful. Not that you have to, but I think learning the basics and being able to see the music and then you can go from there.
Yeah,
I think is also I started in voice, right? So I started with all the choruses and then going into jazz vocals and et cetera, et cetera. But that was easy when I started trying to learn keyboard. It was pretty easy to start to learn all of that because I'd already knew how to read some music and transposing, that's the word I'm looking for, that um I think made it a lot easier. So learning keys I think is crucial. I agree
yeah,
with you.
yeah.
Um okay, so let's talk about how did you learn, you talk about this. How did you learn that you had perfect pitch?
I was probably, I don't know, maybe 9, 10 years old, and honestly, it certainly wasn't something that I tried to develop or anything like that. It was
Right.
just like my brother would play a note and I'd be like, oh, that was a C. And he, what? So, and then inevitably what happens, and I hate this so much, is when somebody's like, okay, what's this note? What's this note? What's this
Yeah.
note? I hate being put on the spot like that.
Yeah, that's not
So
fair.
it's not something it's not something that I usually like to advertise too much. But yeah, I do have perfect pitch, and it really helps when I'm, say I'm on my, live streaming and I'm making a groove. And a lot of the beats that I use also have like kind of an assortment of um, either sound samples or like little snippets of piano or electric piano or something like that. So I'll hit a button and it will, like, a sequence of 4 or 5 chords will play. So to be able to use my perfect pitch and be able to tell, okay, so that first chord was an A flat, and okay, that sounded like an A flat minor seven, and the next chord was a D flat seven. Like, that's where I can really like practically call upon that skill. So that
Yes.
I don't need to be hunting for what those notes are. I can just kind of hear what they are. There are some things that throw me, and I don't know why. Like, for example, um, somebody requested that I do Corey Hart's Sunglasses at Night
Mhm.
a couple weeks ago. And it's just an A minor, but for whatever reason, my brain does not hear it as being A minor.
Oh.
And it's really strange. Yeah, I wish I could explain like what is so different about that. But like when I started trying to play along with it, I tried playing along with it in A flat, and like, no, this is like, immediately knew it was wrong. But like, I didn't want to play it in A minor because like, no, this can't possibly be right. But yeah, so that's the other reason why I don't like people like quizzing me on it,
Yeah.
because every once in a while, there'll be a glitch in the matrix, and I won't I won't identify something properly, and I don't know why.
Yeah, no, I mean it happens too. And my friend Mike, he has perfect pitch and he was our pitch pipe in chorus.
Hmm.
So my chorus teacher recruited him. He was in band. He played every instrument. And she recruited him. She's like, "You're doing chorus now, if for no other reason, but we need a pitch pipe and we can make this happen." And it worked. Yeah, so I wanted to highlight that. I just think that it's an incredible talent. You are so incredibly talented. So,
Well,
um,
thank you.
all right, so let's talk. You flexed a little bit on your vinyls. So, is it that you grew up with vinyl records? Is it that you what is the love of vinyl for you? Because we're no longer in the vinyl stage, and yet suddenly we're back to vinyls again.
So when I was younger, it's funny. I actually had a next door neighbor who collected vinyl records as well. He was only like a couple years older than I was.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he kind of planted this seed in my head at the time that, oh, that like vinyl sounds better than CDs. Like, it does, really? And that's like a gross oversimplification. In a lot of cases, that's not even remotely true. But in certain cases, it is. Um, so like that kind of planted something in my head that vinyl was something that I wanted to get into. But also a couple other things. When I was a kid, that was when vinyl was just starting to get like cleared out of record stores,
Right.
which meant that you could get it relatively cheap.
Okay.
So I started my collection from a lot of stuff that was like, in clearance bins. So so that was when you're a high school student and you only have a few bucks to your name, you often go with like what the cheapest option is.
Right.
So I would get the vinyl and the cassettes, honestly, that was, in the bargain bins.
Right.
Um, and when I was in college, a lot of the stuff that I liked, a lot of the progressive rock stuff that I liked, especially the more obscure stuff, um, hadn't been re-released on CD yet. So, we kind of take for granted now that everything's available on Spotify, but back in the 90s, that wasn't the case. And a lot of the stuff, especially the most obscure stuff, the only way that you could get it was on a used vinyl copy.
Oh.
So that was how I, kind of grew my collection back then, and learned about a lot of these great bands that, I might not have been able to hear about for, I don't know, 10, 15 years afterwards, because vinyl was the way to do it.
Right.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
and
but
now that, now that I'm older, I've gone down the rabbit hole and I've learned, so much about the actual gear. I mean, heck, I've got my vinyl shirt on. Um, but yeah, back then it was less so. Really, it was less so about the audio quality, and it was much more so about like the availability of the stuff that I could get on vinyl versus any other format. And of course, and because it was used, and because it was vinyl, and vinyl was, you know not trendy, it was often a lot cheaper.
right. Yeah, and you have two record players and a microphone. What inspired you to get a second one? Is it necessary to have that second one, or I don't know too much about that.
So let's I, you know I need to be honest here that I have a lot more than two.
Okay.
A lot um a lot more than two. So, and in fact, the one that was to my left today
Uh-huh.
was actually new to this setup. Like, it
Okay.
literally just arrived the other day. So, he hangs his head slightly in shame. Um, I have a problem, and I'm admitting that I have a problem. I'm not Jerfo. I know I've said this a bazillion times before, but I'm not Jerfo, the casual admirer of music. I'm Jerfo, the music addict, for a reason. Um,
Live up to the name.
so, so, um, so when you're, and again, I'm not a real DJ, but when you are doing DJ type things, it really helps to have a couple turntables so that you can cue something up on one while you're playing something on the other one. That's the big thing.
Okay.
Um, so that's why I have two in this particular setup, and I've got the CD player up here as well.
And and records, they only hold one song, or does it depend what's on the record? Like, some records can hold more than one song, or
Yeah, so I mean, most records. Here, let me just pull up something at random here. Yeah, so here's Van Halen's first album. So
okay.
this is, an entire album's worth of songs,
Okay.
probably roughly 40 minutes worth of music on one record, probably four songs on one side, 4 or 5 songs on another side.
So
In
how would you
general,
get to song 2? You have to listen to song 1?
no, you honestly, you just move the needle to song two.
There's a point on
So
there that tells you where to start it?
yeah, actually, so if
Oh.
you so yeah, and this I if you haven't looked at a record, I can understand why that wouldn't make any sense to you. But
Yeah.
yes, there are these what they call bands, and they're these darker areas. That's probably not a great example,
Okay, okay.
um,
Let me
because
see.
that's, who knows how old that record is, and that's a 45. So that 45s are usually singles.
Okay.
Yeah, let me pull one of those up here. So yeah, so here's a 45. This is, Rush's "The Big Money" from 1985 or so.
Okay.
So this is one song per side. So, and they call them 40, or I call them 45s, because you play these at 45 RPM, revolutions per minute.
Okay.
Most larger records, like the one that I have in my lap here, play at 33 and a third revolutions per minute. And
Interesting.
they hold more music, and yeah, there are these dark bands between tracks that you'll see. So when you kind of see me like squinting at a record, like leaning up close to it, that's me trying to line up the stylus or the needle with that dark band, so I can get as close to the start as the next song as possible.
Yeah, so that just blew my mind because you always go, up next is the song whatever. And I'm like, "Oh wow, that's really weird that record only has one song on it." Like, but no, you're playing you okay. So you have a lot more music than I'm thinking. I'm thinking each record holds one song and I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
No,
Like, you have a lot more music than I'm
yeah, I don't,
thinking.
this probably won't show up on camera. So, but again, this is Van Halen's first album,
Right?
and maybe if I hold this in a, yeah, okay,
Oh,
you can actually
yeah,
see that.
okay.
See them? Yep. So each one of those dark bands is the start of a new
So,
track.
We learned something today, ladies and gentlemen.
And, more actually some advanced and like actually some consumer record players from, the 80s and whatnot, had optics that would actually scan for those bands on a record and would allow you to kind of automatically say, okay, I want to go to track 1, 2, 3, whatever, much like a CD player would.
Right. Well, that's awesome. I usually learn things from Wikipedia, but you are much more fascinating. So, all right, let's go back to your list here. Let's take a hard turn, as we say.
Okay.
And let's talk about guitar pedals. So, what is your addiction with guitar pedals, sir?
So, unfortunately, the pedals that I had up here, they're no longer within arm's reach, so I cannot just grab a guitar pedal like
No,
I've been
it's
grabbing
fine.
vinyl. I apologize for that. I should have prepared a little bit better.
No.
Um, so, oops, hold on one second. One second. So this goes back to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, guitar pedals were sorry, the record keeps slipping and I don't want to step on it.
No,
So
that's
that's why
fine.
I'm being anal here.
No, do your thing.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, when I was a kid, I wanted, when I first got an electric guitar, I had an electric guitar that plugged into an amplifier, and that was it. So you kind of got the sound of the amplifier, and maybe if you twiddled a couple knobs right, you could make that sound a little bit dirtier.
Right.
But that was about it. So if you wanted your guitar to sound different, like if you wanted to have distortion, like I wanted to be just like Eddie Van Halen. So if you wanted Eddie Van Halen's sound, you needed some pedals, or quite frankly, you really just needed an amplifier like Eddie had and some other effects. But and you had to have talent. Um, but like the biggest thing that you needed was like something else in your signal chain to make your guitar sound different.
Right.
So that was when, even as a kid, I had probably 6 or 7 pedals at one point. But as we got into the 90s, the trend sort of went towards getting a single box that made multiple effects. So instead of having, one pedal that did distortion, one pedal that did overdrive, one pedal that did delay, one pedal that did reverb, and so on and so forth, you had one box that did everything.
Okay.
So I sold off my pedals and I got a box that I still have to this day. Like I haven't plugged it in a decade, but I still have it. And one box that kind of did everything. The problem is that those boxes that do everything very rarely do any one particular thing well. So, fast forward another, gosh, like probably 20 years, because it's probably only been in the last 5 or 6 years that I rekindled my interest in guitar pedals.
Mm-hmm.
But it was, first of all, just the ability to transform your sound into kind of whatever you heard in your head, you could transform it using some combination of guitar pedals, or you could experiment and come up with new sounds that you might not have ever dreamed of being able to create.
Mm-hmm.
So there was that. But also, at the time, I was working full time in IT, and like I needed some way of staying connected to the music world.
Yeah.
And the way that I did that was I'm going to gather up as much flipping gear as I possibly can while I had the means to do so. And that's really what I did. So when I quit my job a couple years ago and started doing music full time, like I had this huge number of assets at my disposal now, including a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of guitar pedals that I could call upon. And of course, it makes a nice visual in the background of my main channel and everything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's great, and I think that not uh, it's gathering. I don't want to say hoarding. Gathering these
Oh, it's hoarding.
items.
Let's face it. I have a problem, and I will admit it. It's
with
true.
with hoarding, I think that that really accentuates the musician, right? So you have all these different things and all these things to call back upon, and it really makes you who you are. So,
And
um,
for a long time, like it was really like I was really very unhappy in my career. You know, I was making decent money, but man, there was this thing that I was just super passionate about, and I knew that I had some talent for it. Um, but I just like at the time I just felt like I couldn't do it,
right.
and then eventually it just got to the point where it's like this is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know if I'm going to be able to like survive if I don't like follow this calling.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah,
Hey, Six Psycho, thank you so much for popping on in. Okay, so I find this interesting that you went from guitar pedals and vinyl records, and we'll touch on synthesizers in a minute. We kind of dabbled, but that you took a swing at photography.
yeah.
What kind of photography are you into?
So when I mean I've always liked photography, but when I met my wife just a little over 13 years ago, she had um a nice DSLR, and like if there is anything that is like any sort of a hobby that's worth doing, I will overdo it, and I will become addicted to it, like
Mm-hmm.
in an unhealthy way. So like I really got addicted to it in what was probably not the healthiest of ways. So I have upstairs. It's been a while since I've gotten anything, but I got I have this collection of of camera lenses, um, and so and in fact, actually, the camera that I use to film myself on my primary channel,
Mm-hmm.
that is a really nice mirrorless camera. And when I'm
Nice.
yeah, so when I'm not um, let's say I'm going to take a break for a couple weeks, like I will use that camera for as my primary walk around camera. Like when I vacationed in Seattle a month ago,
Right.
and that's what I took with me.
Wow.
Um, so I really enjoy portrait photography. I mean, specifically of my kids until my kids get sick of having the lens in their face. Um, uh,
At that
but
point, it
yeah,
doesn't matter, right? They turn 18. There's a contract between you and your kid that says, I am going to take pictures of you. This is what my mom and mine's contract was. I'm going to take pictures of you and dote on you until you turn 18, and then I'll still take pictures of you, but try to keep them as candid as possible.
there you go.
But go on. So, portraits.
So yeah, so that was like I was like huge into it. And what's really interesting is that a couple years ago when um, I quit my job and I was going to do Twitch and music full time, is like it kind of rekindled that a little bit. Now I've managed to be really good. Like I haven't bought any new camera equipment for like at least a year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
But for that first 6 months after I quit the job, I was like, well, I might need this lens um, for filming videos. I could probably use this lens for filming videos, maybe kind of sort of if I squint. Like, it was the kind of justifying a lot more camera gear purchases because of uh, you know, doing Twitch and making YouTube videos and stuff like that. So, in fact, they're just out of reach, but I've got like a handful of camera lenses that I could that I could show you right
Gosh, you should
now.
have known
It's
all this
I
beforehand. You
know,
should have been able to pull everything out of your Mary Poppins bag.
you know.
No, I'm kidding. So you have 4 or 5 cameras for your Twitch stream.
Let me see. I have one, two, three that I use.
3? Okay.
Yeah. So I've got one of them. Um, it's this Insta 360 camera, and it's on a gimbal, and it can be controlled via the app. So like it changes
Wow.
angles. So and every once in a while, you'll catch me like accidentally, not accidentally, but I'll get my sequence of operations wrong, and like you'll see that camera change position, like it changes really, really rapidly.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, so if you ever see the camera like go from here to zoop, here like really quickly, that's because I did things in the wrong order.
Right.
But yeah, so that's that camera shows my keyboard station, and it will like move over to show the drums, and it will move over to show the bass, and stuff like that.
You said it's an
So
Insta 3000 or
in
Insta
Insta 360
360?
is the yeah. I have no idea if it'll have a
It
Wikipedia article.
does.
Oh, there you go.
Yep. Offices in Los Angeles, Tokyo, and Berlin. Action cameras.
Yeah, yeah. So this one like they is was an unusual one for them in that it was specifically designed. Um, it was designed to be like a step above the integrated webcam that you get in a computer or like a regular Logitech webcam or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, actually, it's worked out pretty well.
That's awesome. So, oh, okay. Here's a picture. So these things, I guess this is just one of them, but you said these whip around, and that's so crazy. And then
Yeah,
this,
like it sits on its own little integrated gimbal, and yeah, so it's like you can actually see the head rotate and move up and down and swivel around and stuff like that. It's really cool.
you must have an excellent security system. That's all I'm thinking right now. Is the amount of cameras that are around your house are probably just outrageous.
It's definitely you can tell that as the neighbors walk by, they try not to look in the house, but there's like this enormous spotlight that's focused on this guy with all the cameras around him, and yeah.
All right. So, what you're talking about Logitech, you were talking about some basic computer equipment. So before you went into what you have now and all of the photography addictions and all of that, I'll just keep them calling them addictions because it's in your name. What
Oops. Call it what it is. Yeah.
you said vintage computer equipment. So what's that about?
Yeah. Yeah. So my dad worked for a company called Digital Equipment Corporation. They don't exist anymore, but back in the day, like it was basically them and IBM that were like the two huge computer companies
Hmm.
back in the day. And I remember like every once in a while he'd take me into his office or he'd take me to a customer site or something like that. And like I just remember being fascinated by this stuff. Like these at the time there were these big things with rotating reels of tape on them, and it was just all like I couldn't possibly comprehend everything that was happening there,
Hmm.
but it just like it made this huge impact on me. Like, wow, this is some really cool stuff. Um, and then that combined with a few other things. Around 1980, 1981, we bought some carpet for our house, and it might have been like through Sears or something like that. And they were trying so desperately to get rid of their surplus of Texas Instruments 99 4A computers that they were giving away free computers if you bought carpeting from them. So
Wow.
that was how my family got their first computer, is that we bought carpet.
What? Wow.
So yeah, so I started off on a TI 99 4A computer, and like that certainly started me down a certain path. And yeah, so that discontinued date of 1981, that's probably the year that we bought our carpet. And yeah, because that was they just had so many of these things they weren't selling anymore. And I can't remember if it was like Bill Cosby who did the like was the salesperson for the TI.
Okay.
Um, so anyway, was it shag carpet? No, no.
So, Texas
Uh,
Instrument, as in like the calculator, is that the same
Same
thing?
company. Same company. Yep. Yeah. So, and this thing was cool. It was really cool. It had a speech synthesizer that you could plug into the side, so like some of the games actually talk to you. Which back in the day,
Yeah, that's a big
that was
deal.
that was definitely a big deal. Um, So there was that, and then kind of later on in the late '80s, I was already into music, and the computer to get as a musician, believe it or not, was a computer called the Atari ST.
Mm-hmm.
The Atari ST had built-in MIDI ports. MIDI is short for musical instrument digital interface. So, like, it had a way to talk to synthesizers built into it that no other computer had. You could get like expansion ports that would be able to have MIDI on them, um, but like it was the only computer that had MIDI ports with like one or two very minor exceptions. Um, it was the only thing you could get that had the MIDI ports built into it, and there's a lot of software that was made for it, like for the express purpose of communicating with synthesizers and whatnot.
Wow.
So it was really cool, and that was that really really got me started down the computer path and down the kind of computer music path. Like really, the kind of the what today has become Ableton and Logic and software like that. That was kind of a lot of that was sort of birthed on the Atari ST.
Interesting. Okay. So, w- was this the pre-Apple as far as music integration in technology?
Yeah, I mean, Apple, you could do some of that on the Mac, but again, you had to have some sort of external expansion hardware that gave you MIDI connectivity or some other connectivity. But typically, it was MIDI because at that point, MIDI was being built into all of the synthesizers of the day.
Right.
Starting in probably around 1983,
Okay.
like every synthesizer that you would get would have MIDI built into it. So yeah, some people used Macs, but the Ataris were super popular, for at least a few years,
Mm-hmm.
because they had that built in, especially over in Europe. For whatever reason, they weren't quite as popular here in the U.S., but over in Europe, they were quite popular.
Interesting. So,
Um,
do you collect these old things or you just have a fascination with them?
um, Fortunately, I don't collect them nearly to the extent that I collect other stuff. There is there is a small handful of stuff that I have picked up over the years. Um, Like there was a home computer that Yamaha made. Yamaha, the same company that makes synthesizers and motorcycles and boat motors and probably blenders. I don't know. Like um, it's the same company that makes all this different stuff. Um, but yes, MSX. It was an MSX computer that Yamaha made. Um, but theirs was like basically the only other computer that had MIDI built into it. And I just remembered seeing it as a kid and thinking, wow, this thing is cool. So then as an adult, when I saw one on sale on eBay, I'm like, oh, I'm gonna get me one of those.
Yeah.
So that's what I did.
Is this the
Um,
mouse or is this
yeah,
just
well,
like a D-pad? I said
so,
D-pad like a gamer, but
so I'm guessing that those would be the equivalent of the arrow keys in a regular keyboard. That's
okay.
not the computer
Right.
that I had. I don't know what that is. There were a whole bunch of computers that came out on this with this MSX standard. So it was like sort of a standard set of software and a kind of a limited set of hardware that would be that software would have to support.
Okay.
Um, so it was kind of like in the PC world. There you go. That's actually that's it.
Oh, of course I can't zoom into this, but
Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, it
yeah.
says
Although
personal computer designed for Soviet
oh,
schools.
okay, so it's similar, but not it's not that exact one. Not
Right.
the color on mine is different, but probably based on the same technology. Anyway, it was so I have that. My son, for better or for worse, has developed a whole bunch of dad's bad habits. So he's collected some stuff. He has a Texas Instruments 99 4A. He has a Commodore VIC 20. Yeah, he's got stuff. He's got a whole bunch of vintage game consoles and stuff like that. Um, so yeah, the apple has definitely not fallen far from the tree. This poor
is
kid.
is he into photography too?
To a certain extent, yeah,
That's good.
yeah,
I think everyone should have a little bit of photography in them. I think that,
yeah.
everybody should go out and see things. Whether or not they take pictures of them is up to them, but
Hmm.
meh. Um, okay. Don't hate me, but what is a TurboGrafx 16?
Oh, so speaking of vintage game consoles, the TurboGrafx 16 is a vintage game console that came out a few years after the Nintendo Entertainment System did.
Okay.
Right, roughly around the same time as the Sega Genesis.
Okay.
Um, and it never really got the same level of popularity here in the U.S. that the Genesis got, and then later on the Super Nintendo got.
Right.
Um, but it had kind of improved graphics and sound capabilities over the original Nintendo.
Mhm.
Um, and it was really cool. There were some really cool games for it. My brother happened to have one, so I remember very vividly playing it. And there's actually been a mini version of the console that's come out in the last 4 or 5 years, something like that, not too long ago.
Yeah,
Um,
I typed this in and it said mini.
the mini, yeah,
Yeah. 2020.
there you go. Yeah, so pretty recently. They actually did a really nice job on the mini console too. I would recommend it to anybody who can get their hands on one. But a lot
Bomberman.
on yeah, probably most of the games won't look familiar to most people. But the games that I loved were the Bonk games, specifically Bonk's Adventure, and you can see Bonk's Revenge is on there. Um, but yeah, Bonk's Adventure was easily my favorite of the system, and it still is to this day. And it's part of what got me into Twitch, actually.
Interesting.
So back in it was probably must have been in 2020. Yeah, probably October of 2020, something like that. I was watching YouTube and I looked up Bonk's Adventures speed runs or something like that, and I found a speed run done by this runner named Princess Za. Princess Za actually happens to be the princess that needs to be saved in the Bonk's Adventure game because of course it's a princess in distress. That's
Right.
that was
Yeah, it said similar
that
to
was
games like Zelda series.
exactly.
Mhm.
So um, I found out that she streamed on Twitch, so I started following her on Twitch and watching her on Twitch. And hers was really the first Twitch community that I ever felt like a part of. And it was like must watch TV for the better part of a year and a half.
Yeah.
Whenever Princess went live, fortunately she only streams like once a month these days. But like it was like the first community that I ever felt like I was a part of in the Twitch world. Um, and yeah, it's kind of what got me into like hanging out in other people's streams, and then eventually starting to stream myself.
Right. Yeah, you can do it too.
Hmm.
Um all right, so I found this one funny. Brazilian steakhouses.
Oh yeah, well I was probably really hungry at the time that I came up with the list. Um, so I could have put any number of things because I love eating. My gosh, do I love eating, and that is a
Okay.
problem. But like specifically, um, I love going to a Brazilian steakhouse where the wait staff will come up to you and they'll have like a saber with meat hanging off of it, and just if you want some, they'll just slice it right off,
Right.
right there in front of you. And oh yeah, so there's the Fogo. Look at Fogo. That's a big one.
F. Okay.
Yeah. So that is a big chain of Brazilian steakhouses, and that's what they'll do. They will walk from table to table with giant skewers of meat, and if you want what they have, they will just slice it off right at the table onto your plate.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds delicious. Known as Manhattan.
Hmm.
Okay, wait. There's 3 levels with a private semi-dining. That's why this name sounded familiar. If it's in Manhattan. I'm from New
So
Jersey. So
there you go.
I've been in Manhattan a lot.
Yeah.
But that's
There's
awesome.
there's a yeah, there's a location in Boston, so I've been to the Boston one, and I've been to other, similarly styled
Right.
steakhouses. Right before the our twins were born, Frosty and I went on a cruise, and they had a steakhouse, a Brazilian steakhouse, right on the cruise ship, which was like kind of awesome.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, the best restaurants for keto, that's for sure.
yeah, there you go.
That's for sure. Or the paleo diet.
Hmm.
Yeah. Okay, so now you're talking, so you're hungry, you said. So what about Vietnamese cuisine?
Yeah, so I also love Vietnamese, and that um, you know, honestly, it brings back memories of a really a not very good relationship that I was in, probably around 1999, 2000. But like we went to Vietnamese food pretty regularly, so I have very fond memories of the food, just not her.
Right. That's
um,
fair.
but uh, but yeah, just a lot of the flavors that they have in that cuisine, I really like. And they're kind of the signature pho dish, is you know can be delicious. There you go. There, it's right there. Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
You want to
you know the
stare at it a little longer,
yeah.
or?
So, but yeah, it's, that was that was kind of a gateway to a whole bunch of other Asian cuisines for me when I was this was probably my early 20s or something like that. So yeah, so I definitely have like super fond memories of like this one Vietnamese restaurant in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, good stuff. Would do again.
Would do again.
The restaurant, not the relationship.
No,
No,
yeah,
super.
I get.
Yeah.
I haven't had too much Vietnamese. Not that I don't want to. It's just not something I've ever seeked out. It's not sook out. It's seeked out.
No, I
Um,
mean it's they aren't everywhere like say Thai restaurants. Like you can find a Thai restaurant on kind of like every street corner these days, but
right.
Vietnamese restaurants not so much.
Galvos, have we had Vietnamese before? He'll be able to tell me. I have no memory of anything at all. I'm just looking through to see if anything looks familiar. Not really, no. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. But my favorite place is Fo King. Yeah, which is
Yeah.
great. We have a few ATMs at a few Fo Kings. I used to work for an ATM place, and it always cracks me up some of the names. And Fo
Hmm.
King is one of the places we have an ATM, and I was
That's a
like,
great one.
yeah. Um. All right, so it's good time. We should do. It's pho, right? Or is it faux?
I usually say like more like pho, but I would not rely on my pronunciation at
Right.
all.
Um, but yeah, I agree. I like noodles, and I mean, we just had, and this is not similar at all, but we just had wonton soup, and I was drinking the broth, and I was like, man, I want something more in this soup. This soup is lacking. Pho. Okay, got it. Um, all right, so let's go back a little bit. We were talking about Bonk, and then you
Hmm.
had written down Legend of Zelda, like Zelda: A Link to the Past. Is that the one that was on the 3DS?
No, although they might have re-released it on the 3DS at some point. This
Okay.
was the one that was on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
But there's a big community on Twitch for that game still, and there's some people who play just the game like what we call the vanilla game. So just as it was, you put the cartridge into your console and just play it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but there are folks who have developed what are called randomizers, both in that game and a whole bunch of other games too. But the Link to the Past randomizers, it's kind of like one of the biggest ones that you'll find on Twitch, where under normal circumstances there's like a very set location for items within the game, and there's stuff that you have to get. this item from this dungeon to be able to proceed to the next dungeon, because you can't get to a certain part of that dungeon without that item,
Right.
something like that. Um, well, the locations of all those things will be randomized. So you'll have to not only know the layout of the game really, really, really well, but have to be able to follow the logic of the randomizer. And it's just like watching all of these people navigate all this stuff and play with like such an incredible amount of skill. It was really fun to watch.
That sounds really cool. Now let me see
Yeah.
if I type in random. Let's see. Quirky random characters. For swords, dungeons are randomly generated and are affected by the number of players. No, that's a link to the past and four swords.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there'll be a wiki entry for the Link to the Past randomizer.
There
Oh,
it
there you go.
is. Yep. Yep. Many speedrunners also play a Link to the Past randomizer, a mod that randomizes the location of most items in an attempt to evoke uncertainty and excitement in playing the game for the
Yeah.
first time. Uncertainty. A
Well,
Link
because
Between Worlds, this one here, is what I was talking about,
okay.
which is 3DS, which plays off of A Link to the Past.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is interesting to me. I've heard of speedrunning, but not a randomizer.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's in a way it becomes a little bit of an equalizer, because you have folks who will play these randomizers who are like the best of the best at playing the vanilla version of the game.
Mm-hmm.
But the randomizer like kind of becomes a little bit of an equalizer because it introduces an element of luck.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also the skill of being able to to correctly determine what the logic of the randomizer is, so you can sort of almost predict where the items are going to come next if you follow the breadcrumbs well enough.
Okay.
So it's really cool to watch, and it's, especially the skilled players, and see some of the things that they're able to pull off in real time. It's like kind of astounding.
And now there's is the Twitch streamers that you see doing this. How did you stumble upon this specifically, this genre?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. It might have been maybe from watching a games done quick marathon.
Okay.
So a couple times a year, they have awesome games done quick, and then summer games done quick. So AGDQ and SGDQ. Make sure I got that right. I think I got that right.
Mm-hmm.
And once a few years ago, um, there was actually a combo randomizer, I think, because people have actually combined a Link to the Past randomizer with a Super Metroid randomizer, like into one game. And
Wow.
they've made like kind of, they've turned certain places within Link to the Past and certain places within Super Metroid, where if you go and go into a particular room, it will take you into the other game, and back
What?
and forth like that. Yeah, like it's really crazy. So I think I watched a speed run of, in this case, it was actually two, one really good Link to the Past player and one really good Super Metroid player. It was Andy and Oats and Goats were the two players. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. But anyway, so I watched them play. So that might have been how I got into that. Um, I really don't. That's the best that I can come up with. I can't remember otherwise. Like how I started getting into. It might have just been that I was following the Games Done Quick channel,
And
and
then
then that led me into some similar channels, suggested channels and stuff like that.
yeah,
That's all I can think of.
suggested
Yeah,
channels is powerful. That's how I found you. So the
that's really
algorithms,
good to
man.
know,
Yeah.
because I know I've talked about that before, and I always wonder like who actually like gets visibility to see my channel, and then I don't know if somebody just randomly stumbles upon me, like what are the odds that they're going to stick to it? I don't
Right.
know.
And it's weird too because I've had people, and you've probably seen me, being like, "What? What are you doing here?" And the person's like, "Wait, what are you
Yeah,
doing here?" And I think it's because somebody that they know is in that channel, and because somebody that they know is in that channel, it then recommends them.
Yeah,
So I don't know
that's
the algorithm,
huge.
but yeah, I think that's great. And I've definitely just been like, what are you doing here? And it's weird because Fart and I find each other everywhere. Like
That's
we
too funny.
we literally every channel we're like, what are you doing here? Like, how did you find? Well, I found in recommended channels. Well, I guess I know how. Like but yeah, okay. So let's see. Vietnamese cuisine, Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past, randomizer. Then we talked about Super Metroid for a minute. Is that where Super Metroid blends in? Is that the same thing, or do you have
Yeah.
a way that it connects to you through like your childhood?
Well, so when I was a kid, I played Metroid
Okay.
on the NES, and that was a fantastic game for its time. And I remembered like absolutely getting just absorbed into it. Me and a friend of mine, and like we didn't have any guides or anything, so there was so much trial and error and
Mm-hmm.
getting absolutely lost in this game because like for its time it was this very expansive sort of map, and there were a lot of dead ends and a lot of rooms that they kind of looked very similar to one another that you'd have to navigate through to try to get to, and you weren't even sure like necessarily what your objective was. You just had to put, eventually put all the pieces together. But it was really cool, and like for its day, like the movement to the main character's name is Samus, and her movement um, was really it just looked a lot cooler than a lot of the other Nintendo characters that you have had at the time. Like when she jumped, she would flip in the air, which unlike Mario, where
You
maybe he
jump.
would twiddle his little, yeah, it would just jump or something like that. Um, yeah, see, that's not even a good screen cap because when she gets a little higher, she'll actually do these flips in the air. Um, so yeah, that always stuck with me. And then um, one thing I didn't mention is that I should have put this in my list, but probably in the late 2000s, early 2010s, or something like that. I got into these things they're called tool assisted speed runs.
Okay.
So these are not real human gameplays. There's somebody sitting in an emulator, um, and they basically pre-program the absolute optimal possible movements for a game, and it almost sounds like cheating, but the amount of work that some of these folks put into uh, tool assisted doing these tool assisted runs is remarkable. Like hundreds of thousands of re-records. You like advance the game a frame and you
Right.
try something and you advance it another frame, and like it was, so everything is absolutely frame perfect, or at least that's the goal. um, and I found tool assisted speed runs of the original Metroid, but then I found out that there was this Super Metroid. Like, oh,
Oh.
what is this? um, and those were just absolutely fascinating runs to watch because again the movement in Super Metroid is just so cool looking, so badass, especially for a console that came out in the 90s.
Right.
It just looks really cool. um, and so eventually through that I eventually discovered like real-time speedrunners, like real people who actually run this game, and that's equally if not more impressive to see some of the stuff that they can actually pull off in real time, without any tools, without any cheats or anything like that. It's really like kind of astounding to watch.
Yeah. And what's funny is,
Yeah.
have you ever played the Mario Kart series like at all? Like,
Hmm.
okay. So I never know how much video games people like. You're talking about a lot of sweet video games, but I didn't know if you went up to the N64 or the Wii or the Nintendo Switch. I don't know what you have in your household,
Yep.
but they always have where trials where you have to beat the best run of a ghost. And
Hmm.
that's exactly what it makes me think of, is like the people who had to think of the fastest route. Now it's with some wiggle room because
Exactly.
you have to make it so that the player can actually win a little bit.
Yeah.
But the amount of effort that goes into making sure that you have the fastest move and the best boost and when the best boost is and all of that, that's that's somebody's job. Like that's
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
that's
But yeah, I
crazy.
mean, but that's actually that is a legit example of a task or a tool. Tools. Now, in this case, it's not an optimal task that those ghosts that you're playing against. They are somewhat optimized, but they're obviously beat. If they weren't beatable, then nobody would want to play it.
Right.
Um, but yeah, I remember playing Mario Kart Wii and like the feeling of satisfaction when I finally beat all the ghosts. Like
Right.
that was amazing. But yeah, so just to in this household currently as we speak, we have a Nintendo Entertainment System, so an original Nintendo. We
Mhm.
have a Super Nintendo. We have a Nintendo 64.
Mhm.
The GameCube isn't actually here. My son has that at his mom's house, but
Okay.
we have a GameCube. We have a Wii. We have a Wii U, and he has a Switch. So we have like all of the consoles covered, and he has I think he has an original Game Boy, and he has
Nice.
a Game Boy Advance, and he has a DS, and he has a 2DS, and he has a 3DS. And so when I talk about just this addiction that we have to like when we are into something like we really go all out,
Yeah.
it now spans generations. Unfortunately, this it yeah, my son is just as bad at it as I am.
Yeah, the 3DS is probably my favorite system. I have a
Yeah.
Switch, and 3DS is still some of my favorite games are on the 3DS.
Hmm.
Like I said, A Link Between Worlds was my favorite Zelda that I've ever played. It's the only Zelda I've ever successfully beat.
Wow.
Like, yeah, not I'm not very good at Zelda, but that one I really enjoyed. But anyway, the off topic. So let's talk about electric cars. Hard left. So why did this make your list?
So I have had a Chevy Volt, which is actually what they call a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So um, and it was discontinued by Chevy a few years ago, but I've driven that for the last 5.5 years or something like that, and I've loved it, especially the way that the Volt works, which is there's some cars that work similarly, some that are slightly different, but the Volt you charge it and you can get upwards of 50 or 60 miles on a charge, and then it turns into more of a traditional hybrid like a Prius.
Mm-hmm.
So it has a gas engine built into it and whatnot. So it was kind of for its time, it was sort of the best of both worlds, where
Right.
you could get the all electric functionality for local driving, but then you had the gas engine for doing longer drives. Um, and after driving that, like I really don't ever want to go back to a gas engine vehicle. Not even just for the environmental reasons, but just they're so much more enjoyable to drive. You get instant acceleration, so there's no hesitation. When you put your foot on the gas pedal,
Mm-hmm.
there's immediate response. Whereas even with like unless you're driving like ridiculous supercar or something like that, there was always that little bit of lag between when your foot hits the pedal and when the car actually goes.
Right.
And if there's anything that people into video games don't like, it's lag.
Right.
um, so it's a real night and day difference with electric vehicles. And the Volt is like no sports car by any stretch of the imagination, but it's still like it's super responsive. Um, and I've driven I rented a Tesla for a few days, and unfortunately, my desire to own a Tesla has diminished significantly since Elon Musk has gone more into the public eye.
Right.
But
Right.
the car um, is this was a Model 3 that I drove, and like it was just grinning from ear to ear driving the thing because you get this instant acceleration, and when you put it in ludicrous mode or whatever it is that they call it. Like it is ridiculously fast acceleration, like roller coaster kind of acceleration,
Wow.
but quiet, because
Okay.
that's the other thing, is that the acceleration doesn't come at the cost of a ton of ambient noise. Because so it, yeah, it is just a complete, for somebody who has to drive a lot, because I still have to drive a lot because I teach private guitar lessons in the evening and I go basically house to house.
Right.
So I do a lot of driving for that. And, as the, um, you know, as the parent of a child from a practice marriage,
Yeah.
as we like to say,
Mhm.
I do a lot of driving back and forth, picking them up and bringing them here.
Right.
So it is just a huge difference driving that versus driving a gas engine vehicle. And there of course the environmental differences as well.
Right.
And the other thing is, there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about electric vehicles, and folks, to a certain extent, legitimately so, concerned about what they call range anxiety. So, like, oh, I don't want to be stuck in the middle of the highway without any battery power.
Right.
And what this car will only go 250 miles on a charge. Then what do I do? I need to wait for hours for it to charge. It's so that there's stuff like that that you need to. It's a different mindset,
Yeah.
because you start each day. You can charge at home. I don't have any special power hookup or anything like that. I just plug into the regular power in my house. And for my car, because it has a small enough battery, I plug it in the evening, and by the morning it's fully charged. So I start my day every single day with a full tank of electric vehicle.
Right.
So, and that's the big difference between that and a gas car. It's not like with the gas car, you sip gas for a few days and then have to go to the gas station. No, you start anew with that, let's call it 250 miles of range on a fully electric vehicle, on that on average these days. Um, you start anew with that 250 miles at the start of every day. So if your commute back and forth, on a given day is, say, 100 miles, which would be a pretty lengthy commute.
Mhm.
Um, but let's say you're doing 50 miles each way. Great.
Right.
You
You s-
it's you plug it in at night. You wake up in the morning and you got 250 miles of range again. So
So my
so
in-laws live in St. Louis, and that's about 400. It's about 4 hours.
mhm.
So that's a big distance.
Yeah. So it's the longer trips where it becomes a little bit more problematic. Um, so with the newer cars that have been out for the last few years, and admittedly with the Teslas too, um, as long as you can, most of those cars have built-in way to plot out your journey in advance, so that you'll know exactly when you need to stop and roughly how long you'll need to stop to charge. Um, the Teslas have had fast charging capability for probably a decade now.
Right.
Any modern electric car will also have fast charging capability built into it now. So you go to a place that, or hopefully the chargers are operational. That's the biggest gotcha right now, is that
Right.
so many times you go somewhere and the chargers are out of order. That's the biggest pain in the butt right now.
Right.
Um, but um, you go, and typically these days it takes a half an hour to 45 minutes to, like, get yourself a sufficient amount of charge where you can go and either finish your drive, or get yourself to your next destination
Destination.
charger. So
Okay.
usually, yeah. So is it as convenient as being able to stop at a gas station these days and 5 minutes later you're filled up and you're on the road? No. But if you don't mind a half an hour of getting out and stretching your legs, having a snack, something like that, um, then then it's totally doable.
Yeah.
There's a good series of videos on YouTube. The a channel called the 8-Bit Guy,
Okay.
who does a lot of vintage computing stuff. But he also, one of his videos was his drive to like some vintage computing expo that he's in somewhere in Dallas Fort Worth area in Texas, and the expo was in Chicago, and he drove that in his Chevy Bolt. So he documented like all the stops that he made on the way, and how long he had to wait at each stop, and stuff like that. So it was actually it was very informative
Yeah.
to see that.
Um,
And
go ahead.
there's another channel called Technology Connections, which covers some kind of similar ground. He did it in a Hyundai Ioniq 5, and similar length journey. So yes, it's definitely a change of mindset, and yeah, it's not today. It's not as convenient as being able to stop at a gas station, fill up,
And
and
then
and
go.
go on your way again.
Right.
But again, that's for the few times a year that you're doing that kind of drive where it's less convenient, versus the daily commute where it's significantly more convenient because
Right.
you just charge the car at home. So there's a little bit of a trade-off, but for 98, 99% of the driving that you're doing, for most people, it's way more convenient because you'll never have to stop under those normal drive circumstances. You'll never have to stop at a station to charge because you already have sufficient charge to get you through your day.
That's crazy. Well, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, that's something. I got the Volt in 2018, and I've just been like kind of a convert ever since, just because it's just so much more enjoyable to drive. You can have an actual conversation and listen to actual music in the car. You don't realize like
Noise.
um, how much louder it is in a regular car until you spend some time in the electric car, and you realize like, wow, this is super quiet
I can hear my ears
compared.
ring. Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
okay, so with that, I was curious about like the Volt is a hybrid, right? Or is
Yeah,
it?
yeah. I mean, its designation would be PHEV, so plug-in hybrid electric vehicle.
Got it.
So yeah, the Volt, you plug in, you get that 50, 60 miles of pure electric driving, and then it acts like a hybrid after that.
Yeah. That's something that I would definitely like. I would like the hybrid. I would want to like test the waters
Hmm.
and then be able to be like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
Um, um, so I hear you're a sponsor for Pepsi Zero Sugar. Is that
I wouldn't say that I'm a sponsor. In fact, I would specifically say that I'm not a
not a
sponsor
sponsor?
of this delicious beverage.
So tell us, Jerfo, why did this make the list?
So it is. So I don't drink coffee. I don't drink. I don't drink alcohol. Um, it. But I've always liked that delicious cola taste. And as I've gotten older and I need to watch my calories,
Hmm.
I need to be careful about where my calories come in, and to be able to have sorry, I'll stop. Um, but it's so the big reason why I like Pepsi Zero Sugar. So first of all, I fell victim to its original marketing when it was Pepsi Max,
Hmm.
because it was like the diet soft drink for men.
Right.
Like, I'm a manly man. I can drink this drink.
You're right.
So, and it first of all, it tasted better than like a Diet Pepsi, Diet Coke, whatever. I think Diet Coke is garbage. But anyway, it tasted better than that stuff. Um, but also at the time, it had like a tremendous amount of caffeine.
Says it's
So,
contained twice the caffeine of Pepsi's other cola
mm-hmm,
beverages.
yeah.
That's crazy.
So, and you can see there before a recipe change in late 2022. So
Hmm.
yes, it very recently changed. So admittedly, it is a new improved taste. And I agree that it is the taste is improved.
Okay.
However, I do, you know, I wouldn't mind making the trade-off of going back to the old formula if I could get the caffeine back, because it definitely, like, it was almost too much at times. Like, it would definitely make me jittery,
Yeah.
but but yeah, it was good stuff. Those were the days. But yeah,
Those were
so
the days.
it's yeah, it's my thing. It's it's what I prefer to drink. I'm not going to turn, like, if somebody, like, we've got a bunch of Coke Zero in the house right now. I will gladly drink the Coke Zero, but then when I go back to this, it's like being reunited with an old friend, if not an an old lover. Like, just
Yeah.
yeah. Mm,
Pepsi goodness.
yeah.
My mom always had Diet Pepsi in the house, so we weren't a Coke product. We were all Pepsi products,
Mhm.
and she loved it so much, and my dad loved it so much because they would mix it with their drinks, right?
Yep.
Well, we had it, the 12 pack. It would come in the cans, and we would always want some sort of soda or Pepsi, and so my friend Becca would go ahead and do a somersault in the hallway, like James Bond, somersault in the hallway, go into the side hallway, grab a Diet Pepsi, somersault her way through the hallway again so that she wasn't noticed, and then back into the bedroom, close the door, and we'd split the Diet Pepsi.
Nice.
Like, that's what I get when you're saying, like, it's reunited with an old lover. Like, we cherished that Diet Pepsi. Like, it was everything. So I get it, man. I'm like that with I don't drink soda. Caveat, I drink diet ginger ale if I need something bubbly for, like, indigestion.
Okay.
And then I drink 0 calorie or 0 sugar energy drinks.
Hmm.
But not a lot of them. I'll have, like, that's my coffee substitute if I don't have coffee. Like, either I'll have black coffee in the morning or I'll have a Monster in the afternoon. Okay. So now that we've talked about me too often, let's go back to, I'm assuming this is an island in Hawaii.
Oh, Kauai. Yeah. Yeah, so that's where Frosty and I went on our honeymoon,
Aw.
was Kauai, and it is just so gorgeous there. And then the nickname is a very, very apt nickname because it is just so green there. Just yeah, it is just absolutely gorgeous. There's a gorgeous canyon on the island, which is just sort of Grand Canyon esque. Just the yeah, it is a sight to behold, and of course, because it was honeymoon, we have extra special memories.
Right.
We did a helicopter tour
Oh,
of the island
wow.
with an open door helicopter.
Oh, God.
So that was incredibly cool.
No, thank you.
So cool.
I
It's
would I
really
would do it if it was like honeymoon and special, but if you were just like, "Hey, let's go on a vacation and let's go up in a helicopter with no doors," in my mid to late 30s now, I'm like, "No. That's not going to happen." But if it's like making a special moment, then yeah, I mean, I'd skydive once in my life kind of thing, but
yeah. The funny thing is, I never at any point. I think when we were initially taking off, I was like, okay, this is a little scary.
yeah.
But then as soon as we got high enough, it became almost surreal,
Oh,
and that
wow.
the fear kind of went, and just like all of a sudden it was just we could take in all this beauty. Just so gorgeous. So yeah, it's absolutely a beautiful beautiful island, and I'd love to get back there sometime
Would you do the helicopter ride again?
in a heartbeat.
Oh my God. Now I have to do
Yeah.
it. We go to Aruba as our special place.
Hmm.
And now I feel like I have to do a helicopter ride with
Yeah.
no windows.
Yeah.
Well, a window, oh, like, you know what I mean, doors.
Yeah.
Otherwise, that sounds like you can't see out of it. It's just
Yeah.
just a helicopter. That's it. That's all you get to see.
It doesn't actually go up in the air. It's just
Right.
it's
It's like a
it's a
Six Flags type. You feel like you're in a
exactly. Yeah.
helicopter.
Yeah.
They show you scenery on the front in a
Yeah.
green screen style.
Hmm.
So okay, so you did the helicopter ride. What other, I mean, did you um go on any, it wasn't a cruise, it was a flight, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So we flew to, I'm trying to remember how the order in which we did it. Probably flew through Honolulu to get to Kauai. Um, and yeah, we just, we were, we rented a car, we drove to various parts of the island, explored uh, the canyon, had some fabulous food,
Yeah. Now
took a lot of pictures.
the roads and stuff. When I was in British Virgin Islands, there was a lot of straight up roads, right? So like going through a lot of the hills and stuff, because we weren't on the touristy side, we were on the non-touristy side.
Hmm.
I'm assuming that if you're talking about canyons, there's a lot of, oh, what's the word? Back windy
Like,
roads.
yeah, so the drive up the canyon was a little bit hairy. I remember that. That was steep and kind of scary at times.
Mhm.
But also going to the northern part of the island, there were a ton of one-way roads and one-way bridges, and basically you had to just
Honk and
like
pray.
look. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Honk and pray.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Switchbacks was the word that I was looking at.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. But that's epic. So yeah, it's a little less touristy then. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So there was still stuff there.
Right.
So the, it was totally my speed, where it was, you could go to a supermarket and get some provisions or whatever you need to get. But then if you wanted to get off the beaten path and be by yourself for a mile around, you could do that too.
That's great.
So yeah, it was kind of the best of both worlds as far as I was concerned.
Yeah.
And a great way to for a couple newlyweds to spend a few days, definitely.
Yeah. And you don't need a passport.
Exactly.
I've always wanted to get to Hawaii and just be like, I didn't need a passport to get here.
Hmm.
um, okay. So we're gonna come back to a few of your likes, but because we only got about 20 minutes here, let's like dip into your dislikes. Which
Okay.
is funny because two of them are definitely mine. Um, which is the first one, which is the, I'm assuming with you're talking about marketing, they're talking about the like, comment, subscribe model. Is that what you mean by marketing, or what does marketing mean to you?
So, like specifically having to market myself, like I've never been comfortable with that. Just there's some people who have a real knack for it, and I do not. And the fact that so much of what I do and like so much of how I need to be able to build my brand and bring more people to my channel and stuff like that involves marketing, and I just hate doing it. I
Yeah.
absolutely hate doing it with a passion because I first of all I just don't have an aptitude for it, and secondly I feel like I'm um, I don't know. I was just always brought up not to bring attention to myself, and here I am in a business where like I desperately need to bring attention to myself in order
Right.
to bring more people to my channel. Um, and yeah, I just do not have the skill, um, the mindset, the aptitude, the desire. Like what fill in your buzzword right there. I don't, can't, will not.
We need to get you a marketing team.
Fabulous. I don't know, I don't have a budget for it,
No.
but
I thought that was in the mod contract. I thought that was where the t-shirt and
yeah, that's
I've
about.
had a few people ask about this t-shirt. I really have. Um so and they're like, "What's a DJ Airfo?" And I was like, "Let's talk about this. What do you know
Mhm.
about Twitch?" They're like, "It's a gaming platform." I was like, "Let me change your mind."
Mm,
Like but that's, I mean, unfortunately, that's what people think of first.
yeah.
Literally in the app it says PUBG, Fortnite, and other I forget exactly what it says, but it's like PUBG, Fortnite, and other platforms or something along
Yeah.
those lines. And you're just like, but music is such a core piece of Twitch. And I'm curious as to see. I got my hotel, I got my plane tickets to TwitchCon. Galvos and I are going to be going, and
Woot.
I'm so excited. But at the same token, I'm curious how much is going to pertain to me as a viewer.
So when I went to TwitchCon last year, and I'm very glad that I went, and I'm excited to go again this year. But I mean, there was, a ton of space devoted to gaming. And then music had this little lounge up in the top corner of, of one area. And admittedly, there were some other workshops and stuff that would kind of pertain to, all sorts of different streamers, whether it was music, gaming, art, whatever. Um, so there was definitely a lot of stuff that that I found applicable and useful. But as far as like specifically music, like it was kind of sort of tucked into a corner, a little ways out of the way.
Okay.
And art had, I feel like art had a little bit more of an area, and it was around the cafeteria. So like people would which is fine because people would naturally be milling about there. So they kind of had a captive audience.
Right.
Whereas again, the music folks, like it took me a while to find where the music lounge was
Oh
because it was
no.
just it was tucked so far out of the way. But I got there, and that's um, eventually what got me into Twitch's music collective, and that is what made me the incredibly high profile popular streamer that I am today. He said without a trace of irony.
And the music collective is the stream team you're on? Or what
No,
is.
so my stream team is Team Vamu,
Right.
but the collective. So let me rewind a little bit. So probably sometime, I don't know, February, March of 2022, I got this very cryptic email that was sent to like pretty much all Twitch music people saying, "Hey, apply for the Twitch Music Collective. You're if you want to advance yourself as a Twitch music streamer, you want to be part of the collective." But like there was very little information associated with it. Um, but I applied and I didn't get in, and immediately was like extremely resentful of the collective, even though I had no idea what it was, what it meant, what it would do for me. All I know is that I didn't get in, and I felt I was wronged. So at TwitchCon, they had basically a QR code to a sign up form where you could reapply to the collective, but it would be kind of flagged as, hey, this person was at TwitchCon, so let's give them kind of some priority to get in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I did. It was actually a great experience because what it actually was 4 weeks of um, education from people who actually work for Twitch and Twitch music partners um, about how to market your stream, how to improve your stream content, and things like that. And it also gave me the opportunity to do a front page appearance, which was huge,
Yeah.
huge, huge, huge. Um, and I met some great people through that program, and kind of what like one of my best Twitch buddies from the last 6 months has been Icy Music, and you've probably seen Icy in my stream from
Mm-hmm.
time to time. She's amazing, and I don't know if I would have met her if it wasn't for the collective.
Yeah.
And one of my other like people who was already a really good friend of mine beforehand, but Annie Bunsen Your Music. Annie was part of the collective with me, so to have some, a really good friend of mine who was also going through this at the same time with me, it was really that was great. And Joyce Lee Music, Joyce was in the collective with me. Joyce is awesome. So there like some really good people who become very good Twitch friends of mine um, I met through the collective. Um, but there's always a but. But a lot of the key takeaways that I got from it were you need to promote your stream really heavily on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube and to a lesser extent Facebook. Um, but there's so much about this is how you grow your audience by doing TikToks and Instagram and YouTube, and that was like sort of the first indication to me, like, shoot, Twitch music isn't bringing in enough people by themselves. There aren't enough people coming to watch Twitch music streams. They're relying on us to bring those people over to Twitch.
Right.
And that's kind of what I'm discovering, is that I feel like, I don't know. I can really only speak for my own personal experience, but it's been a real struggle to try to bring people into to my stream. Which of course, it goes back to the whole marketing thing. It just
Right.
doesn't come naturally to me. So
Now,
there's your answer.
okay, I got it. um,
I wish that I had cracked open a fresh Pepsi Zero Sugar with its new improved taste before we started this. Anyway, sorry.
So tell me why you hate Strandberg. I mean, I know the answer, but why do you hate Strandberg?
Oh, I'm really mad at those guys. I'm really mad at those guys. So for folks who don't know, the Strandberg Bowden was my primary guitar on stream. It was the beautiful, light, headless guitar. Um, Great to play, very comfortable. Um, but it has a hardware issue, and it needs to be fixed. And I wrote to the folks at Strandberg, I don't know, back in February, and they have never gotten back to me. And I've
That's
written to them several times, and it's like, shut up and take my money and fix my guitar.
right.
And it's not like I'm looking for a handout. I'm like, just tell me where to send it. I will pay, and it's um, but yeah, the fact that they haven't gotten back to me makes me a little bit upset with them.
Yeah. Yeah, especially when you're a person who's all about, their product and advertising their product when you use it. Like,
Heck yeah, yeah. But and that's it's one of those things where I feel like if I were a bigger profile streamer or a bigger profile YouTuber or something like that, I would have gotten a response in no time, and that sort of thing kind of bothers me. Like
yeah.
the service arm of the organization, it should be irrelevant how big my name is. I should get treated.
Just the
I should get
same.
treated equal. It's and again, I'm not asking for a handout. I want a place where I can take my guitar to get it fixed, and I will pay whatever the going rate is to have it fixed. So
Right.
I'm looking at it right now. I'm looking at my broken Strandberg that I haven't been able to use for months. It makes me
Mm,
sad.
yeah. Yeah, I liked your Strandberg. I thought it was pretty.
Yeah, it's a really cool guitar, but I can't play it.
Um, so do you so I've read this, and at first I was like, "Oh yeah, I know what this means." But like, you don't mean like the figure troll. Like you mean like people who troll, right?
People who troll, they
Okay.
suck.
Yeah. I don't know, because you had written something about your girls, and then you were like trolls, and I was like, I wonder if he just really hates the troll
No,
dolls.
no. That's not it. No, just folks who, um, they derive pleasure from trying to make you feel bad. And that's that can be in everyday life, but it appears most frequently in a either a chat or comments on a YouTube video or something like that. Um, and I don't think I get trolled nearly as hard as a lot of people do, but it was kind of fresh in the brain because we had somebody who joined the channel the other day, and it's like they were saying nice things, but then they were saying mean things, but then they were saying nice things, but then they were saying mean things, and I can't understand it's difficult for me to understand the mindset. It's
Right.
really difficult for me to understand the mindset. And, in some cases, it might just be that, they have some sort of, there's a legit mental issue there and they cannot have appropriate social interactions. They just, for whatever reason, that their brain just isn't wired that way.
Right.
That's fine. But there are other people like clearly they are, you know, deriving pleasure from making people feel bad. And that's a I don't I don't care, what sort of social issues that you have. If that's something that you get off on, that's not something that that can be explained with a diagnosis. It just means that you're an asshole.
Right.
So,
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, it's weird because the the trolling seems to come in waves, right?
yeah,
So it's kind of like you'll have a lull and you're like, crap, when is it coming? Like, I know it's going to be happening soon. When is it going to happen? Um, but it's always seems to be the same thing. They say something nice, they say something not nice, or they come in and they're like, you suck, and you're like, what is your purpose? Like, why? What is your
yeah,
purpose?
yeah.
So I
It's
don't
it's
know.
it's it, again, it's the only thing that they can possibly have to gain is that they are they are deriving some sort of pleasure from having that control over this random person on the internet. And
Yeah,
by making that person feel bad, they can sort of you know make themselves get that little boost of adrenaline or something, whatever whatever they might feel, for making somebody else feel that way.
like the people who come in, and some people don't know how it works on Music Twitch, but some people will come in and be like, can you say hi to my friend Jeremy so I can capture it on camera because I'm making a compilation of streamers who are going to say hi to Jeremy? And they're like, first of all, you're a first time chatter, so no. But secondly, no. Like,
Yeah.
why do you think or hey, can you play Billy Joel's, New York State of Mind? And you're like, have you watched this channel for more than 5 seconds? Do you think I'm gonna play Billy Joel's New York State of Mind? Like, no. So I don't know. There's also the people who are just inconsiderate, just downright inconsiderate.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, so I have, I guess, one more thing for you, and I liked this one the most, so I saved it. You like thrifting,
Yeah.
so tell me about that.
Yeah. So this is well, I mean, when you collect a lot of stuff,
Mm-hmm.
it's a great way to get a lot of stuff cheap. So, um, I found actually these days it's a great way to get CDs because CDs
Yes.
have like no value in thrift stores right now. So I have a small stack of them here, and you can see the savers stickers on all these, and I have a much larger stack just off camera here. Trust me. But yeah, I mean, so like two bucks for Led Zeppelin's "Houses of the Holy,"
Right.
like it's stuff like that. So yeah, it's a great way to get a lot of the stuff that I like relatively inexpensively, and the thrill of discovering something because you never know what you're going to find on any given day. And that's sometimes, uh, honestly, most of the time it's like it's a little bit of a letdown, but then every once in a while you'll go, like just the other day, um my son and I were thrifting, and we found a MIDI keyboard controller. So that's
Oh,
actually just around the
wow.
corner. So it's a half decent one. And he needed a keyboard stand, and they had a pretty good keyboard stand there, and like they and an amplifier. So I got another amplifier
Wow.
because Lord knows I needed another amplifier. Um, so like just all sorts of stuff like that. The thrill of finding that stuff, and every once in a while, well, most of the time I get it for the purpose of keeping it. But sometimes with music stuff, if it's not something that I need, but I can identify it as something with musical value, either well, usually musical instrument of value. Like I will take that and then occasionally resell it. Um, but yeah, for the most part, it's I don't like doing it for reselling. I like doing it because it's stuff that I want, and I can get it at a very good price.
Yeah.
So a quick example. So when I was in Seattle last month, I was at a thrift store with my son, and I found a record from the artists Tuck and Patty. I don't know if you're familiar with Tuck and Patty, but
Mm-mm.
uh, Tuck and Patty are a fabulous duo. They've been together for over 40 years, um, and also married for over 40 years. Like, you want relationship goals, these two should be your relationship goals.
Got it.
So I found a record of theirs at a thrift store for 50 cents. We That same day, we were heading out to dinner. We were a block away from our hotel. We looked up. Oh, there's a jazz club. Oh, I wonder who's playing. Oh, look, it's Tuck and Patty. So I not only got a Tuck and Patty record for 50 cents, but I actually got to see them perform live, um,
Wow.
which was awesome. And Tuck's actually, and it, whoops, Google I just butt searched something, um, via my watch. Okay, there we go. I found this on YouTube. Thank you, watch. Um, but Tuck Andrus is an incredible fingerstyle guitarist. So I just to be able to, it was a very serendipitous occasion to to be able to actually see him perform live. That was very
Especially
cool.
after getting his.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Hmm.
That's crazy. Well, I'm going to wrap it up here, but I'm curious if there's anything specific that we didn't touch on that you wanted to touch on specifically. I know there was a few things in your list that we didn't exactly talk about in length, but I was just letting you go and letting me go because I thought we had a great discussion here.
No, that was so. I mean, I specifically that the one YouTuber that I put on my list of dislikes. She's objectively horrible.
Okay.
Nobody should ever subscribe to her channel. Oh my gosh.
So tell me why. You don't have to tell me the person. Just tell me why. What about the model?
It was the combination of like, I always feel like she will start her videos by yelling into the camera.
Okay.
I don't like feeling like I'm being yelled at.
Okay.
She exploits her probably 12-month-old child for the purposes of
Mm.
of YouTube gain. And I really don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a lot of stealing of other YouTubers' ideas. So
Oh.
luckily, my girls have not watched one of her videos in probably a month or two, which is good. But when they were watching her videos, that they really struck a very negative chord with me.
Oof. Yeah, that especially the using your kid as a.
That really bothered me.
Yeah, I've never
And she's
liked that model.
Yeah, and she's done it on a whole bunch of videos.
That's a
Yeah.
shame. That's a shame. And I'm sure she makes money off of it, and that's
Hmm.
the worst part.
Yes, that's yeah. Anyway,
um but yeah,
but no, this has been a fabulous conversation. I'm so glad that you had me. I really appreciate it.
yeah, absolutely. And this will go onto YouTube with your permission. So
Sure,
okay, great.
permission granted.
So I'll be able to send this to you and then you can do whatever you want with it. But I like to put all the wikis on YouTube and that way you can also get noticed that way. So,
Awesome.
yeah. All right, well, awesome. Thank you so much for being on. Anyone, if you need to go check out Jerfo the Music Addict, or you can go ahead and check out DJ Urfo. DJ Urfo. And then we're gonna go ahead and shout out Jerfo the Music Addict.
I safely turn this so that I can. Here's one of the turntables here. Oh, this is getting Blair Witch Project-y.
Oh, God.
I'm so sorry. No. Oh, it's
Okay, there it
awful.
is. We got it.
Anyway, okay. Phew. That was close. So yeah, there we go.
Beautiful. I hope
Not
that's
a real DJ.
I hope that's the still shot. I hope that how it comes up with a still shot. I hope that's
Oh
it. It's
yes,
not even a
that's
picture
the
of
one.
you. It's just a picture of the turntable. All right, guys. Well, I'm going to go ahead and head out. We are going to go ahead and do a raid. So just sit tight for a second. We are going to, and I still don't have a raid call because I'm a terrible streamer. But we're going to go into, let's go into Storm the Bard. Completely different vibe. He's a game streamer, but I know him from the Mixer days. Back before the Twitch days, there was the Mixer days. So we are going to go ahead and raid Storm the Bard. The laptop just crashed. Oh boy. It's a perfect time. All right, here we go, guys. Figure out find out if you're interested in some Storm the Bar Warframe. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you so much.